Linux is not secure by default. It's secure by configuration, and over the next 12 lessons, we're going to do that configuration together. This is Lesson 0 of Linux Hardening Mastery, and we're starting where every serious hardening project should start, the threat model. We'll cover why this course exists, walk through Stride for Linux servers, profile the 5 attacker personas from Script Kiddie up to APT, and lay out the 7-layer defense in-depth onion that the rest of the course builds on. By Lesson 12, your Linux score won't be 56, it'll be 92, CIS Level 2 audit passing. So let's make that gap concrete. A fresh Ubuntu install gives you SSH on 0.0.0.0 port 22, root login enabled, password auth on, no firewall, no audit D, and a kernel running stock sysctls with no spoofing protection. By Lesson 12, that same box is key-only SSH on an alt port behind an allow list, root disabled, UFW, and NFTables, with fail-to-ban or CrowdSec in front, audit D shipping to a SIEM, and a kernel hardened with AppArmor and tightened sysctls. Default isn't secure, it's compatible. Your job is to narrow the surface. Now, who's this course actually for? 3 personas, and all of them are in scope. If you're the SysAdmin with 5+ years on Linux running bash and systemed in your sleep, your job here is to audit and harden what you already operate. If you're the DevOps engineer shipping Ansible, Terraform, and Docker through CI/CD, you'll bake hardening straight into the pipeline so it's images, not manual fixes. And if you're the SRE running incident response, you'll make a compromise as loud and obvious as an outage. One caveat, this isn't a beginner course. If CD, LS, and systemctl are new, start with fundamentals first. Before we touch a single config, we need a shared vocabulary for what we're defending against. Stride is Microsoft's threat model, and it maps cleanly onto a Linux box. Spoofing is a stolen SSH key. Tampering is a modified PASID file. Repudiation is an attacker scrubbing your logs. Info disclosure is world-readable secrets. Denial of service is a fork bomb or a full file system, and elevation of privilege is local root through pseudo abuse. Every hardening step in the next 11 lessons closes at least one of these categories. Bookmark this table. You'll come back to it. Knowing the categories isn't enough. You also need to know who's actually swinging at your box. There are 5 personas, escalating in skill and intent. Script kiddies running mass scanners, opportunists chaining known CVEs, insiders who already hold valid credentials, targeted attackers running researched campaigns with custom tooling, and finally nation-states with 0 days and supply chain reach. The honest truth, most internet-facing servers only ever see levels 1 and 2 daily, and SSH key auth, a firewall, patches, and fail-to-ban handle them. If you're genuinely facing 3 through 5, you already know it, and this course gets you most of the way there, but not all of it. So how do you actually stop those attackers? You stack controls, 7 layers, outside in, perimeter, service, authentication, authorization, kernel, mandatory access control, and audit. The point isn't that any single one is bulletproof, it's that an attacker has to defeat all of them in sequence. SSH key stolen. Your sudo policy still stops them. Sudo bypassed. AppArmor confines them. AppArmor escaped. Audit D has the receipts. Every lesson in this course maps to one of these layers. Before we start fixing things, let's see what we're up against. 4 commands on a fresh Ubuntu 24.04 box, SSH listening on the world with password auth enabled, an MTA running on port 25 that you almost certainly didn't ask for, UFW inactive so nothing blocks inbound traffic, etc. PASID readable by every local account, and audit dead. That's the baseline. OpenSSH, OpenMTA, no firewall, no audit, and none of it required an attacker to already be inside. We close every one of these gaps by Lesson 12. Now, before we start closing those gaps, you need a map of the territory. 3 standards dominate Linux hardening, and this course aligns to all 3. CIS benchmark, the one DevOps and SRE teams actually reference, 2 levels, hundreds of checks per OS. NIST 853, broader federal, covers process and people, mandatory if you touch U.S. government work. And STIG, the strictest, DoD grade, free to download and worth reading even if you'll never see a military contract. You don't memorize them. You know where they live and when each one applies. With the standards in mind, here's how the course is built. 4 stages, 13 lessons, each stage building on the last. Foundation locks down what every box needs: threat model, SSH, sudo, UFW. Stage 2 goes deeper: users, sysutils, file system permissions. Stage 3 layers on mandatory access control with AppArmor and full audit pipelines. And Stage 4 is where it all becomes production: CIS walkthrough, Ansible automation, and a 30-point capstone you can defend in a real audit. And here's the payoff: the concrete checklist you'll be able to execute by the end. Not theory, SSH locked to keys on a non-default port with failban catching the noise, pseudo-audited and timed out, a default deny firewall with IPv6 parity, 30-plus SysCTLs tuned, AppArmor profiles you wrote yourself, audit shipping to a CM, CIS level 2 passing, and the whole thing wrapped in an idempotent Ansible role with drift detection. If you can demonstrate these 8, you can harden anything. Before any of that works, you need a lab, and it is not your laptop, and it is definitely not production. You will lock yourself out, you will break SSHD, that's the whole point. Pick one: Multipass if you want the fastest path on macOS or Windows, Vagrant if you want it scripted and checked into JIT, or a $5 cloud droplet if you want real internet noise hitting the box. And the one rule in red: snapshot after lesson 02, because rollback is not optional, it's when, not if. So that's lesson 00 in the bag: threat model defined, personas understood, 7 layers mapped, lab VM ready. Next up is the front door: SSH, key-only auth, alternate port, IP allow list, root login killed, password auth killed, and proper match blocks for your jump hosts and bastion. Spin up the lab, take that snapshot, and meet me in lesson 01. Let's go close the gap.